Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly podcast where we discuss everything and anything internet related. And today we have a special guest. This guy has nurtured me since I entered into the networking industry, and he's been my mentor ever since. His name is Abisai Matangira. How are you, Abisai? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Promise.
Great.
How are you?
I'm right. I'm good. So today we want to talk about the internet landscape in Africa. Africa is known for its notorious connectivity, but today we just want to dissect and find out why that is. What's the reason behind Africa not having such strong connectivity to its people? So we want to get down to the nitty-gritties and find out where we can pick your brains on what's exactly happening. So I don't know, do you have some insights or anything that we can pick on?
Okay, so in Africa, internet has got two types of users. It's got a user who fully understands what is internet, and it's got a user who thinks internet is just WhatsApp and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So on those two lots of users, there are different kind of constraints. I'm going to start with the users who are called the bottom of the pyramid users.
Okay.
These are the users who just think internet is WhatsApp and Facebook.
Okay.
These users, the first constraint which they have is devices.
Okay.
The next constraint which they have is the last mile connectivity, be it fiber or wireless.
Okay.
The third constraint which they have is the competitive landscape in the market. So in this space, someone can still afford to charge for 4 gigs, I would say an equivalent of $10.
Okay.
And the last constraint is the content itself on the internet. The content itself on the internet is mostly international. We don't have much localized content.
All
So
right.
let me blow up the first constraint, the device constraint. It's known by everyone. The content, the devices in Africa
Yep.
are just not the well-spec'd devices. They are devices which have been made to bear with the African budget. So those devices, at most, they've been made just to get that WhatsApp message coming. They can't do more. There are some who even struggle to do YouTube, some who even struggle to do Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
some who even struggle to receive a download from WhatsApp. So this constraint can be dealt with by the international landscape or the device manufacturers coming up with a smartphone which fits into the African economy. The African economy, I'm not well educated in that space, but I'm thinking they earn between $30 and $60 a month.
But
Can we get a cheap device which fits that space?
on that front, when we're talking about the devices, is it touching only those people in the rural areas who don't have what we would call the smart devices or the capable devices, or this is also people in the urban areas?
So the population dynamics here, it's mostly 60% in the rural. The major employer in this space is agriculture.
Okay.
So that person at most is working at a farm.
Mm-hmm.
At most is a farmer. He probably earns once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when your question was generic to say what's happening in Africa. Why don't we have much internet usage, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I am saying the first constraint is the device, and the device targets those guys at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay.
The other lot which I introduced earlier on is the working class, the middle class. This is the 30 to 40% plus. These guys, they go with the trend. These guys, they follow the latest Samsung, the latest iPhone. These guys have access to the internet.
Okay.
But they don't have the critical mass to now say, is internet now ubiquitous in terms of everyone connecting in Africa? No. This middle class are just the trend setters. The middle class are mostly the IT guys, the well educated,
Okay.
and those guys who've got good jobs, yes. So the first constraint is the device. Before we talk about 4G, 3G, 2G, the first constraint is the device. We can deal with this. We can deal with this constraint by saying, how do we finance the handset? Or how do we take advantage of Moore's law to say, let's have a $10 device, which is very, very fast.
But with that in mind, I'm just thinking out loud that mobile phone manufacturers, when they look at the landscape in Africa, when they see that the devices, they are not that much powerful, and I'm just thinking, well, then they make a device, that's purposely built for Africa, that can enable everybody to access the internet, because right now, with what you're saying, only a limited, if we are talking in the rural areas, only a limited number of people have these smart devices, as we're talking about the first constraint. So if you're going to do financing, wouldn't we need to tie into the manufacturers of these mobile devices so that they can see that there's an opportunity in Africa to create, I would say, middle-class devices that are also affordable? Wouldn't they see like a market opportunity?
It's been happening. I'm seeing lots of Asian new entrants coming in the space.
Okay.
At some point, to get a good smartphone, you probably need $200 plus.
Okay.
I'm glad with those Asian entrants, we're now talking $80 plus. But it's still far from it. At most, the basic user wants a phone which costs $20. Because remember, they're taking 1 month of earnings just to buy a phone.
Yeah. Okay. Then we can go on to the second constraint that you're talking about.
So the second constraint is last mile. So the economies of scale for putting up a 4G base station, they need some level of subscriber density.
Okay.
That subscriber density is not available in an African suburban setup. If you look at the African suburban setup or African rural setup, people are spaced further apart. Few people per square kilometer.
Okay.
So as is the current telecom space design, the design of one massive tower, one massive 4G base station, doesn't give us 100% coverage for Africa.
Okay.
It probably do well in a major city, but you're going to find that as you go outside that city, in my limited knowledge, most major cities, they're probably going to take 30% of the African nation, as 70% are out there in the rural areas.
Okay.
So I think that constraint can be fixed by the African providers looking up to new upcoming technologies.
Okay.
I'm glad I look at Elon Musk and his set of satellites, low Earth orbiting satellites, which he's putting up.
Yeah.
He's trying to address that, but that's a couple of years down the line. There is another one called OneWeb, Intelsat. They're trying to address that, but it's a couple of years down the line. We need to move away from that whole massive tower, massive base station, to a whole lot of small base stations which are closer to the people, but backhauling with something, satellite or something which is accessible to anyone else.
Okay, I think I'm not too sure if the Google Loom project is also trying to sort of like put a solution.
They're trying to come into that space. But the way they're trying to come into that space, they need to come up with something sustainable. The Loom project, yes, but I don't see it as a sustainable project to cover the whole of Africa. I'm beginning to see some sort of long-term sustainability on the low Earth orbiting from Elon Musk and OneWeb and a whole lot of other nodes, yes. But the price of the CPE is not yet accessible for each household.
Okay.
Well, my limited knowledge on that last mile is if you're going 4G or if you're going any wireless cell,
Yep.
Just to put up a tower in a very optimal position, a tower is going to need $40,000
Okay.
to $100,000. The base station itself, if you go for the least 4G base station provider, you're going to probably get away with $25,000. If you go with the upper end, you're going to need $70,000 for a single base station. But now, if you divide that by the density of people with that cell, you're going to wake up, if we're assuming it's 500. So if we just say 100,000 divided by 500, I know you've got a calculator there. Roughly, how much is that? That's the upfront cost for the customer. Let me just quickly work it out. That's the upfront once-off cost. Let me quickly work it out. That's $200 your cost per customer.
Okay.
Obviously, this customer is going to be recharging every month. How long does it take to get that payback? That's the key thing. So I guess on the last mile, we have to look at ways of optimizing. Let's work backwards here. How much does a person earn per month?
Okay.
$30 to $60. How much can they pay for internet in a fair way? Maybe $2. Okay, so $2. What payback do you want for this infrastructure?
Okay.
If it's 2 years, work backwards to come up. So we need to put out there a challenge. Africa must not just be driven by the international trend of saying everyone goes 4G, everyone goes 5G. No. That doesn't work. That works out there. I like the Americans. They have a chain of providers who they call WISP, wireless internet service providers or rural service providers. They've got a whole different model. So we need our own model here to address the last mile. I'm not going to talk of fiber.
For Africa.
Sorry?
I'm saying provider one that's tailored for the African problems, not just a generic one.
Yes, for the African bundle.
Okay.
I'm not going to touch on fiber because the fiber equation just doesn't make sense. If you are very optimal, $8,000 per kilometer. If you walk across a kilometer in the average Africa, how many people are you going to see there? It works in the city. It works for backbone. But maybe until miracles happen, the fiber model is just not that. So to sum up, last mile is just not a network operator solution. Last mile is to say, the technocrats out there, what can we bring to fit into the disposable income of the greatest part of the African? We also need to take cognizance that to fix poverty in Africa, we need a lot of people shifting onto the digital economy.
Correct.
So we should also help them, as people are coming to internet, it must be like they're paying rent for a business. They must now be seeing the value of it.
But this issue of last mile, it's not something that just started now. It's something that's been there. It's something that's been out there. So wouldn't people or wouldn't service providers have come up with a solution now? Because this is something that's been seen 10 to 15 years back. It's not something that we just saw like 2 years back that, okay, the last mile, there's challenges of density, so we need to come up with a solution. Wouldn't something already be out there, but it's just not being adopted, or people just don't want to go out there and look for solutions?
Okay, I like the fact that when we started internet here in Zimbabwe, for the little company I am at, I won't mention the name, we had a link for 1 megabit per second. That's not way back, that's just in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
But the growth has been too fast. I think the way the doubling has been happening, no one knew that's where we're going.
Okay.
At this time which we're talking right now, there's the whole COVID pandemic. In that whole COVID pandemic, we're actually going to get more internet demand right now to a point where we're going to oversustain 4G.
Yeah.
So I guess the people who were pace setters in the internet access. They're struggling to get people to accept internet.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's now a lot of catch up now because now people accept internet, but it's just that internet is not set for access of everyone.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. What about the third constraint that you had?
Okay, so we are now going on to the competitive landscape.
Okay.
The becoming an internet access provider or internet service provider or a telco provider in the world has got some regulatory requirements, which are there. Mostly the licenses are an arm and a leg.
Okay.
So it's designed in a way that on a mobile space, it's going to be 3 to 5 operators within a space. Those 3 to 5 operators have got huge capital costs. These huge capital costs which they have, they pass them on to the subscriber. When they pass them on to the subscriber, it inflates the prices. So it's the competitive space, the cost of capital in Africa, which affects the price for internet. The second tier, it's an aspect of saying, I have got the greatest infrastructure, so I must charge the most. Most African countries are landlocked. Those who are not landlocked, they say we have access to the sea. I'll take you through the value chain. If you're buying an internet at the top of Africa, there, Marcel, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
You're gonna get 10 gigabit per second at $2,500 per month. How much is that? Let's divide. Let me do maths. So I like the maths part here.
Okay.
So 10 gig is 10,000 megabits per second, right?
Yeah.
So 2,500 divided by 10,000. This is 25 cents per megabyte per second per month, right?
Per month.
Yes. This is from the source. Remember, I mentioned earlier on that our internet is mostly coming from outside there.
Yeah.
So that 25 cents, I look at my market, Zimbabwe. If I've got lots of traffic and I make the best deal, I'm going to negotiate to maybe get $30 to $25 per meg.
Okay.
So now look at the competitive landscape where there's crowded service providers, lots of tier one up there in Europe, Asia. It's 25 cents. Now just to push it to Zimbabwe here, it becomes $25. How many times has it gone up? It has gone up 100 times.
I hear you.
So competitive landscape, I'm saying, the person who's got the undersea cable, is he pricing this to get his profit back in 1 month, or in 1 year, or in 2 years, or is he pricing this to say, I need to have much capacity on these fibers, I need to fill up these fibers? So I think they're more choosing the immediate profit. So we probably need to have someone who comes and I like Amazon. I don't work for them, but they are trying to say, let's make cloud cheap. They are making cloud cheap by saying, everyone come on cloud.
But right now, Africa has got 19 undersea fiber cables that are active, and with a whole lot of landing points dotted across West Africa and East Africa, coming down to Southern Africa. Would we say that these guys are pricing because there's no competition, or they are just out there just to make a killing? Because if we say competition, there is competition. 19 cables, wouldn't that be considered as competition?
So the data which I don't have right now, I've got old data. At the time where it would probably cost 2.5 gigs, 2,500, it would probably, for that same amount of capacity, it would be costing $80,000 to move it from Macero to the Maputo border.
Okay.
So I don't think the market is matured the undersea cable providers. I don't think they have enough capacity to reduce their price per megabit per second. That's the first issue. Or the second thing is they're trying to milk the market as much as they can right now.
They're trying to milk an empty market.
No, it's not an empty market. They understand. I think the idea which people are designing their model at is to say we've got 30% internet hungry people with money. How do we make our money there at the cost of the other 70%?
Okay, sure.
Okay. But it's a matter of time. As time progresses, that price of meg, I'm sure one day it will become dollar.
It will be very much affordable for people.
Yes.
Okay, well, fair enough. But I'd like to bring up a different point. Like when I was doing my research for this podcast, I came across Bofinet, which is a sort of like a government entity in Botswana. This government entity is responsible for all the, I would say, the long-haul fiber infrastructure in the country. So basically they own, they operate, they do all the projects, I think, for all the long-haul fibers in the country, so that the service providers can concentrate more on the last mile, I would say. But still with this scenario, so this means it takes away the service provider from putting up infrastructure, long-haul infrastructure, which they would have to charge to the customer. But still looking at the prices of internet in Botswana, they are still very high. We would expect with this type of scenario that internet should be considerably affordable, but it's still high. It's still up there with those providers who are doing their own infrastructure. So does this help in any way to sort of like try to limit the service providers to focus only on the last mile and just pay a minimal amount, a monthly rental for the bandwidth for the long haul, and just have them focus more on the last mile? Does it help, or in any way, or what needs to be done in order to get the internet much cheaper, besides removing the device itself, which we talked about, the first constraint? If we remove the device aspect and just talk about the connectivity, does it make sense to have a government entity controlling the long haul, the back haul, and only have the service provider concentrate on the last mile?
It makes sense if it is, from a policy perspective, designed in a manner which increases the number of people connected to the internet.
Okay.
But as is, I'm sure if you look at BOFNet, they are actually talking directly to the end customer. So they're doing two things which are in conflict. They're trying to save other providers, and they're also trying to get other customers.
Okay.
And naturally, that creates some competition where they are trying to price everyone out so that they get most of the customers. So for this to work well, the approach should work well if it's designed well. If it's designed in a manner where someone says, the 1 megabit, which I'm going to push here, might, let's start afresh. The government must start by saying, our target price per megabit is $5 or whatever local currency they have. They work backward now to say, of that, how much must be the transmission portion? They charge that. Regulators in those space, they then regulate that price at that point. In that way, we then start seeing some positive outcomes. The way it's being done right now in most African countries, it's more or less for control purposes than for opening the market.
Okay. It's more of controlling and trying to have access to people's data, you mean?
Control refers to many things. Control could be referring to say data is a strategic resource, but we have it in the hands of private players.
Okay.
It's like private players owning the road in the traditional transport world.
Okay. Understood. So, wow. So this is crazy one. Crazy one. The fourth constraint, the last constraint that you had. I think you had four constraints, right?
Yes.
What's the last
My
one?
last one, it's content.
Content.
In Dubai, there, what are the top services? Just give me an example. Top internet applications.
Top internet applications. I would say it's definitely social media. That's topping social media. Anything social media related.
Okay, but do you just name the websites which you have there.
You have
the top websites. I'm trying to look Google. I'm trying to do a quick search here. But I'll use China. China is a different situation. If you go to China for search, they've got Baidu, right?
Yeah.
For YouTube, they've got their own video website.
Correct.
If you go to Russia for search, they've got Yandex, right?
Yeah.
They got a couple of their own localized applications. You guys have an application called, I think it was recently bought by Uber. What's the name of your Uber competitor there?
I know there's Karim.
Karim, yes. So my whole story is to say, in Africa here, if you want to have search, it's international Google. Yeah, Google is trying their servers here. But if you want to do Uber, there's some international servers. If you want to do, what can I think of? YouTube, most of the content is out there. Netflix, most of the content is out there.
Okay.
So the way the internet is designed in Africa is to consume most of the content coming from outside the continent.
Okay.
Or outside the nation. The content space answers the internet exchange spaces.
Okay.
So you find that if you look at most of the traffic which is passing through a local exchange point, in my view, it's mostly email and DNS traffic, and maybe banking transactions.
Correct.
We need more content locally or in Africa, which localizes traffic here. So, for example, if Netflix is chowing lots of bandwidth, can we have a Netflix server here? Can we have African content here? All lots of content. I think what's happening is, in the space of website development, everyone came alive, everyone was developing websites.
Right.
But in the space of internet content for Africa, or internet applications for Africa,
okay,
our engineers are yet to push at their max. Our developers are yet to push at their max. So this content space, if done well, is the space which is going to reduce the constraint of, remember I spoke of that 25 cents becomes $25 here in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
As it moves from Marcel to Zimbabwe.
Yes.
If you have a relevant application or relevant content here, probably it can now get its internet access to that same 25 cents per megabit here because it's local, but we don't have that. So it's a constraint of we don't have much content to reduce that price or to get someone accessing it here.
I think maybe it will be an issue of the chicken and the egg, like who came first? Because if we are talking about creating content, we would need many eyeballs to have that content. So I think once you have a lot of people on the internet, maybe they'll be inspired to create their own sort of like personalized services and then create content for Africa. So maybe it's a chicken and egg to say, okay, which one starts first? Do People go onto the internet and then create the content, or people
Just
create
imagine,
content first?
sorry to cut you there, just imagine the top 5 operators in Africa.
Uh-huh.
They wake up and they say, if you have any local content here, we're going to charge you 60%. For accessing any local content, we're going to charge you 60% less. It gets everyone now motivated to put their items. But right now, as it is, one charge takes me to US, one charge takes me to a local server.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think maybe that's where that policy that you were talking about, that maybe that's where it comes into play. Say if the government brings out a policy or a framework that can at least sort of like help generate local content, because right now there's no motivation. If you have, for example, if you want to do a video out there, you know you're competing with someone already in the US or whoever who's everywhere. So users are more inclined to reaching outside rather than coming back and seeing that content that's local. So maybe it's an incentive maybe that can be put out there and see if that makes sense or not. All right. But anyways, just from speaking from your experiences, besides the cost of rolling out infrastructure, whether be it wireless or fiber connectivity, just for providers in general, is there sort of like a communication between the providers and the regulators to talk about the licensing framework? Because I know the licensing framework is one of those things that's very expensive. If you want to be a provider, you have to pay lots of money. Is there something that the providers, the current providers, are speaking to the regulators, I would say the whole of Africa, just to sort of like understand and to get about that hurdle of licensing costs?
Sure, I believe our regulators have done some serious work or some serious effort in selling the ideas of infrastructure sharing.
Okay.
The key issue now is the operators themselves. The key competitive advantage in people's minds right now is to say infrastructure. The language here in Africa is to say, I've got the greatest coverage.
Okay.
The language here in Africa is not yet to say, I'm talking services. So I guess the law is trying to allow an open market in a manner which also causes some harm. The law need to just say, if 2 people put fiber here, everyone must share that fiber.
Okay.
The pricing at most is going to be like this. The law must now optimize for efficient capital allocation. So I guess the law can just rush to get there. The law is at this point still stakeholder engagement, selling the idea, but we're losing time. The lawmakers now just need to say, everyone stop, these are now the new laws. I believe in some African markets it's already happening. I know South Africa, I've seen they now have some neutral fiber operators there.
Okay.
Where I am right now, we've got someone trying to come in and do that, but we're still at early stages.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. All right. I think that's just a bit about that. Talking about the internet landscape in Africa. I don't know, before we round up, do you have any closing remarks or anything that you would like to point out before we close for the show?
I think Africa has got lots of problems. Those which come into my head are poverty,
Okay.
health access, energy access.
Okay.
As we leaping on to the fourth revolution, or whatever people are calling, the key driver of that is going to be internet.
Okay.
Internet, if done well, I was laughing in the news sometime last year. There's a shortage of avocados.
Okay.
In some worldwide markets there. But here in Zim, if you go further down towards Mozambique there, those things get rotten and get thrown away. But if internet is priced well, the devices are priced well, the whole world won't get a price increase in avocados. Because someone down there in Africa would say I have, and the logistics is almost there. It's just need to be further digitized. Logistics comes and picks it up. And it automatically starts solving poverty through inclusion.
Interesting.
So the internet is there to change Africa. Secondly, we talk of health and education. We've got less teachers and less doctors. Internet can give that access, that equal access to that science teacher, that doctor who's required, just at the right price point. Okay. Lastly, energy. Obviously, internet can't deliver energy, but internet can change the way energy is going to be used out there. Some financial providers can come and say, let's give people access to internet, but it's prepaid solar. So governments, in the form of regulation, must know that internet is a basic need which needs to be controlled from a pricing standpoint.
Okay.
Which need to have targets of saying, are the content players coming? Are we getting cheaper devices? All those constraints I mentioned there. At some point, they must have someone who gives people targets. So that, yes, businesses must make profit, but you gotta make a profit also fulfilling the grant purpose of the nation.
Correct.
Yes.
All right. I think that's a bit about that. We've just had a small discussion on why internet is still a bit pricey or connectivity is still patchy in Africa. And we had our guest, Mr. Abisai Matangira. Thank you for coming to the show. And we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you very much.